Hello everyone and welcome to Skein Spider. Today's video is part 3 of the Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch cover. Check out parts 1 and 2 if you haven't already, because you'll need to do those first. But if you've already seen them, grab your hooks and let's get started. In part 2 we finished crocheting our switch cover, so in this video we're going to put it all together. First step is to clean up this mess. Now if you crocheted over all of these ends, you can just go and snip them off straight away, but I didn't crochet over all of them, so what we're going to do is weave them in. To do that, we're going to take our needles and we're going to thread the tail end through the eye there, and then we're going to weave the tail end in through the backs of the stitches. There we go. All you need to do is weave in for several stitches. You can also weave back, then weave back in the opposite direction just to make it a little bit more secure. And you're going to do that for all of your tails. When all your ends are weaved in, you can go ahead and trim off the excess. After you've weaved in all your ends and you've cut them off and your cover's looking nice and neat, we're going to block our switch cover. You don't have to do this step, you can skip it if you like, but I would definitely recommend it. It gives it a much nicer finish and it helps stop this curling, so it makes sewing a lot easier. All we're going to do is start with our bowl or container of water and have on hand your towel, your pins, and either a ruler or a tape measure. You can also use either an old bit of foam or a corkboard or something to put under your towel to give the pins something to stab into to hold it in place, but if you don't have anything like that, you could always use 2 or 3 towels stacked on top of each other. Alrighty, all we're going to do is take our switch cover and we're going to place it in the water, push it underneath. And just make sure it all gets wet. And while that's soaking for a second, okay, now we're going to take our cover out of the water. We're just going to gently squeeze the excess water out. Don't wring and twist it because you don't want to stretch and distort your stitches. Just gently squeezing all the excess water. Another way you can do this is to, instead of using a bowl or a container of water, you can use a spray bottle or just run your cover under the tap, but I just find this easier. Once you're done squeezing out the excess water, we're going to lay our cover flat on our towel. Okay, and this is where we bring in our pins and our tape measure. I'm going to start at the top here. And I'm just going to place some pins in the corners. One there. And one there. All we're going to do is pull the edges. We want to pull gently, don't pull too far. Again, you don't want to stretch or distort your stitches. So we want to make each line nice and straight. The reason we need our tape measure is to make sure everything is the same size so it lines up correctly. So when you have the top nice and straight, when you've got your top pinned, you're going to measure it. So my top at the moment is approximately 26 centimeters. So I'm going to make sure that the bottom here matches up, but obviously laying flat. The area that is probably most important to focus on in terms of getting the size correct are the sides, which is these two bits that stick out, and the sides of our front and back panel. Both the front and the back panel are each 30 rows high, and our sides have 30 stitches in them. So we want them to be able to line up evenly. So what you want to do is measure your sides. So I'm getting 14 centimeters here. And you want to make that match up to the side here. So at the moment I'm at about 13.4. So I'm going to have to bring this down a little bit. And the same here. Keep in mind that the back panel, we only go up to row 14, which is where we made the second lot of the exposed back loops, because this part here from row 14 down is the top and the front flap. From row 14, that's where we want to measure up to when we measure the side. Continue to pin down the rest of your switch cover, making sure to measure everything lines up. Move pins as you need, stretch things out as you need. Again, don't stretch too far that you're distorting your stitches. I've got all my pins in now. My sides are roughly the same length as is the top and the bottom. All we need to do now is leave it to dry. I usually leave it for about 24 hours, but just leave it until it's completely dry, however long that takes for you. And when it's all dry, we can finally put it all together.
Several days later.
Once it's been roughly 24 hours or your cover is completely dry, go ahead and remove all your pins. And then for the next part, you're going to need your stitch markers. What we're going to do now is line up our side panels with our front and our back panels. To do that, all we're going to do is turn our work. We're going to line up the very last stitch of our side panel with the last stitch here of the front panel. And I'm just going to take my stitch marker, insert it through there. There we go. And through the front. And then I'm going to work my way down the side here, just inserting my stitch markers to keep the side and the front together. And making sure all the stitches line up. So you'll have the first stitches lined up, the last stitches lined up, and all the ones in between. I'm only going to use 3 stitch markers, but you can use as few or as many as you like. Once you've done one side, we're going to turn over and repeat the And I'm going to go into the second row here. Work over this tail end, or if you prefer, weave it in afterwards. I'm just going to single crochet and repeat into the third, single crochet, and I'm going to continue that all the way down the side. I've just done my last stitch here. What we're going to do now is rotate our work and single crochet across the top. What I like to do is put the first single crochet into that same stitch we've already worked, so effectively we're going to have 2 single crochet in that stitch. Just it makes turning the corner a little bit neater, so we're going to single crochet into that and then continue single crocheting across the top. That's my last single crochet for the top. All we're going to do now is rotate our work again and continue working all the way down the side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put 2 single crochet in this last stitch here. Grab your scissors and snip a tail long enough to weave in. And all we're going to do is repeat that same process on this side with your colour of choice. I'm using light blue. Grab your needle and weave in your ends. I'm just going through the backs of the stitches here. All we have left to do now is the top here. And there's a couple of different ways to do this depending on how you want to close your switch. I'm going to crochet this part in white, so I'll have that ready. Now if you're not going to bother with either Velcro or buttons, just go ahead and join your yarn in the corner here and single crochet all the way around to the other side, and then you're done. Weave in your ends and you're done. You can do the same thing if you're going to use Velcro. On my, where is it? My prototype here. I used these little sticky Velcro circles, and then I used a sewing needle and some thread to just sew them on and secure them, so that you can do that if you prefer, or you don't need the sticky Velcro, you can just use any Velcro that's small enough. But what I'm going to do today is use some buttons. The buttons I've chosen to use are 2.5 centimeters or 25 millimeters in diameter. And what we're going to do, as you can probably see here, is just mark out where we're going to place our buttons. I've counted down from the top 6 rows, and in between 5 and 6 here is where I'm going to place my buttons. I've also counted 10 stitches in. So there's 10 spaces, and in the 11th and 12th stitch is where I've placed my pin. So from the top, count down 6 rows, and then count 10 stitches in. And then in the 11th is where we're going to start to attach our button. I've cut a length of white yarn. I'm just going to use that to attach my buttons. With the buttons sewn on, we're going to turn our switch cover over. Start right in the corner from where we left off with the green stitches here, or whatever colour you're using. And we're going to join using the exact same method. We're going to yarn over and pull through. One slip stitch, And then our first single crochet is going to be in that exact same stitch. Single crochet, and you're going to single crochet all the way up the top. I've reached the corner, and again I put two single crochet in it like we did for the corners here. And what we're going to do now is single crochet along the top here. I'm going to start with 11 stitches because that's how far in we put our buttons. What we're trying to do is line up the last single crochet we've done with roughly the center of the button here. So if I lay my cover flat, line up the sides. I think I need to go one more over, so I'm going to do 12 single crochet. This is the part where your pattern might differ from mine. What we're going to do is we're going to chain, and we want to chain enough to be able to go around and catch the button, and then we're going to come back here. So we can't have it too loose because otherwise it'll fall off and our switch cover will just open, and obviously too tight and it won't go around the button. The amount you need to chain is going to depend on a couple of things. It's going to depend on the size and the placement, how high you place the button. It's also probably going to depend on your tension a little bit. If you crochet really tightly, you'll probably need a few more chains. If you crochet fairly loosely, maybe a few less. So what I'm going to do is I'll start with 12 chains. 1, I'm just going to grab a stitch marker and secure my end. And then I'm going to bring it back around, because what we're going to do when we have the right amount of chains is single crochet back into that stitch we just chained from to secure this loop. So I'm just going to hold it there so I can get a rough idea. And that seems to go around pretty well. I might take out 2. I'm going to take out 2 chains, so that will give me 10. 1 and 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. Insert my stitch marker, loop it around, and I think that's better. So I'm going to do 10 chains for my button catcher. You may be able to do the same amount of chains, but what I would recommend is just sort of experimenting a little bit like I did here. Once you have whatever amount of chains you're doing, we're going to go back into that same stitch we just switch cover. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, etc. And I'll see you guys next week.